In a valley that had seen many seasons, there once was a river. It wasn't the widest, it wasn't the fastest, but it was steady. It moved through the land with quiet purpose, nourishing the soil, feeding the trees, offering life to everything it touched. The river didn't question its role, it simply flowed. But over time something began to change. The seasons grew heavier, storms passed through more often, debris found its way into the water, fallen branches, loosened earth, things carried from far away. At first the river adapted. It always had. It pushed a little harder, moved a little faster, tried to carry everything at once. But slowly, almost invisibly, the flow began to strain. The water grew cloudy, the current uneven, some parts rushed wildly, while others became stuck and still. The river was still moving, but it was no longer at ease. One day, after a particularly heavy storm, the river reached a bend it had passed 1,000 times before, but this time it couldn't move through it. Too much had built up, too much pressure, too much force, too much carried without release. And for the first time, the river stopped. At first it resisted. Stopping felt wrong. The river had always believed that its purpose was to keep going, no matter what. To push through, to carry on, to never pause. But as the stillness settled, something unexpected happened. The water began to clear. Not instantly, not completely, but enough for the river to notice what it had been carrying. Branches it didn't need, silt that had weighed it down, debris from storms that had long since passed. Things that were never meant to stay. And in the quiet pause, the river understood something it had never allowed itself to realise before. Not everything that enters you is yours to carry forever. So slowly, gently, the river began to release. It didn't force the debris away, it didn't fight the current. It simply allowed the unnecessary to settle, to soften, to drift free when the time was right. Some things left quickly, others took time, but with each release the water felt lighter, clearer, more like itself again. As the days passed, the river began to move once more, but this time differently, not rushed, not forced. It flowed with awareness. It noticed when the current became too strong. It recognised when the water began to cloud. It allowed itself to slow before it reached the point of stopping. And in doing so, it discovered a new kind of strength. Not the strength of endurance, but the strength of balance. Along its banks, life began to respond. The trees leaned in closer, the soil softened, the air itself seemed calmer. Because when a river flows well, everything around it benefits. April often arrives like those storms, a month that reminds us how quickly things can build, how easily pressure can rise, how quietly stress can take hold when we don't notice it forming. And like the river, we often try to carry it all. Push through, keep going, ignore the weight until we have no choice but to stop. But what if stopping wasn't failure? What if it was awareness? What if the pause was the very thing that allowed you to see clearly again? Because stress is not the enemy, it's a signal, a sign that something has been held for too long, carried for far too long, or managed without enough space to release. And like the river, you're allowed to let things go, gently, gradually, without force. April also asks for honesty, to notice not just what we carry, but how we cope, the habits we lean on, the ways we try to quiet the noise. Sometimes helpful, sometimes numbing, sometimes simply familiar. And without judgment, it invites a question. Is this helping me flow or keeping me stuck? The river didn't promise never to face storms again. It didn't become perfectly clear forever. but it learned to listen, to pause sooner, to release more often, to move with itself rather than against itself. So if this month feels heavy, if your thoughts feel crowded, if your energy feels uneven or strained, perhaps you don't need to push harder. Perhaps you just need a moment at the bend in the river to pause, to notice, to let the water settle. And to remember, you are never meant to carry everything. You are meant to flow.